Here's a sample of what you'll hear on this episode of Holistic Health Matters.
People that I work with, the first thing that I tell them, David, is that they're not alone. So never to try, when you're working and you're bringing in changes into your life and you're doing it, I always ask them to get support, like whether it's from family or community, something where someone and somewhere where they are being supported with the changes that they will need to make.
Welcome to the Holistic Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing your health potential in spirit, mind, and body so that you can pursue the abundant life more effectively. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach, and this is episode number 40. This episode is brought to you by my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. Getting educated on natural and holistic health is time-consuming and can be expensive, not to mention overwhelming. I want to help you with that. My book will put you on the fast track to the vibrant health and vitality you've been looking for. By the way, many of my recommendations won't cost you a nickel. They're free because a lot of my message is simply aligning our lives more fully with the Word of God. That doesn't cost you anything. If you'd like to avoid overwhelm and get some biblically based holistic health information that you can implement right away, go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/book. You can learn more and pick up a copy today. If that doesn't work, you can go directly to Amazon. It's available there in paperback, Kindle, and Audible. Today we have on the show Pooja Chilukuri. Pooja is a nutritional therapy practitioner, a health coach, wellness educator, and a published author. She's written a number of Christian books. Pooja is committed to helping individuals balance their nutritional deficiencies and help them cultivate healthy habits with ease to help prevent or reduce the damaging effects of unresolved chronic health challenges. Pooja, welcome to the show.
David, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a very busy person with your health coaching practice. Tell me, what was the inspiration behind your holistic health work?
I think the inspiration, David, was based on a very personal journey that I was on with my own health situation. And it has to do with a wake-up call that I got one day in a doctor's office. So just to back up a little bit, I was very, very active as a young mother. I was also very active in my church. We were involved in all different kinds of ministries. And at the same time, I was working a full-time job. So I had a full plate. And I certainly wasn't paying attention to my food habits, my lifestyle, self-care, none of that. And that was also the time in my life, David, that I was really struggling with my faith. I was experiencing burnout with my church ministry involvement. And I didn't feel like I could say no to things because there was an expectation that had been set up. When we live under that guilt or that stress of trying to please everybody, trying to fulfill all the expectations that people have.
It's very common.
Yes, and also a very quick way to lose your health.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that was also a time I disconnected from my spirit. And I was on my way to becoming an atheist. So that was that element going on. So just losing my faith, losing my health, like everything was just coming together like the perfect storm. And and I think I received some help from above, or I don't see how I would have started my health journey. I think the first thing that happened is I had a nervous breakdown one day, kind of like a meltdown. And this was at home. And this was me really struggling, between atheism and between wanting to get back to my faith. And when I had that nervous breakdown, that day I felt somebody was there in the closet with me. This was at home, and I was alone, and I had shut the door because I was crying and I didn't want my children to hear me. And so I was alone in the closet, and I felt this overwhelming presence, as if somebody touched me. There was nobody there, but I felt the touch, and I felt it all over the left side of my body, and it went down like waves of gentle, something like an electric it wasn't like a strong electric current, but I have no words to describe it. So the closest word that comes to my mind is electricity. But it really wasn't shocking. It was very gentle.
Okay.
And I had peace, and I felt really loved. So that, the whole atheism thing went out the window because I thought, look, there is somebody here in this closet with me, and this being really loves me. And I just took a chance and I just called out Jesus because that was my faith. And as soon as I said the word Jesus, I felt like heat and just this tangible warmth, presence. And I really felt like I was getting an answer that he's real. And so I really had that moment of awakening where I had to do some soul searching. And a long story short, this happened over many days, so I don't want people to think that it was instant. But, the struggle and the soul searching and trying to reconstruct my faith. But one of the results of that is that I exited my corporate job.
Wow.
And decided to go study health and nutrition and just trying to heal myself, with both prayer as well as food and lifestyle, because we need all aspects. That's what makes it holistic.
Yeah.
And so I decided that once I was done with my complete my studies, I wanted to share that with others because I realized very quickly that I wasn't alone, that there were a lot of people suffering from chronic health conditions. And people just didn't know where to start sometimes because if you try to Google questions and the answers you get are so confusing.
Yes.
Especially when it's health related. People have opinions. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So that's why I felt led to kind of just streamline everything and go get that certification.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent. I love that story. That's really good. This is Holistic Health Matters. So I firmly believe that we are a spirit, we have a mind, and we live in a body. And all three parts to a person are interconnected and interdependent. And I personally believe that the spirit is the foundation. And it starts with the right relationship with Jesus Christ. When we come into that personal relationship with Jesus and we put him on the throne of our lives, that's our starting point. The Bible says that fear of the Lord or knowledge of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So that's where we start. And because our spirit is the highest and most noble part of our being, when it's connected to God, the spirit will animate our minds in healthy ways. And our minds should be in submission to our spirit that's in submission to God, the Spirit, Holy Spirit. And our minds will animate our brains, and our brains run our bodies. So we have a connection there, and the connection goes both ways as well. If we have something wrong with us physically, then that can affect us mentally, emotionally, and that will affect our spiritual condition as well. So we really need to address the whole person. If we're going to really address our health challenges and do it well, we need to address the whole person. So it sounds like you're there. You've done that, been there, done that, and now you're telling people about it. So that's great. I love it.
Thank you, David. I couldn't agree more with you. The spirit is so key. And the mind does run our bodies and vice versa. Our bodies talk to our minds too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so, there is a well-documented mind-body connection in the literature. But as I just said, it's more than just that. It's a spirit-mind-body connection. Yeah, it's important to talk about that. Of course, the physical is very important, right? What we eat, what we put in our bodies, how we treat our bodies, and the amount of activity that we incorporate throughout our weeks, detoxification, it's all super important. It's foundational even. If we could, let's talk a little bit about how you deal with nutritional deficiencies with your clients. Why should a client even care about nutritional deficiencies?
That's a great question, David. And one of the things that I found in the last 10 years is nutritional deficiencies can sometimes really mimic chronic health conditions. So, for example, I work with someone that had chronic headaches, and he thought he had migraines, and he was taking medication for migraine. But it turned out that he was chronically dehydrated. So that was kind of, for him, it led to a misdiagnosis. So just getting to have the electrolytes and the water, it took some time, but his headaches went away.
Awesome.
So that's just one example. But sometimes people have low mood. They're feeling depressed. There's low energy. There's no motivation. And sometimes that can end up in a diagnosis for depression. But it could be that the person is really deficient in B vitamins, in magnesium, and having a lot of sugar in their diet. So sometimes when we're not eating a balanced diet and getting all the nutrients that we need, our body starts showing symptoms. And some of those symptoms can be very similar to diseases. And so it's hard to tell them apart. So that's why I always tell people the first place you want to look is the nutritional deficiencies. Are you sufficient?
Yeah.
And then you can, work from there. And if everything's okay there, then you definitely want to check it out.
I want to talk about water for just a minute. You mentioned that guy got rid of his migraines. It was migraines, right?
Yeah, that's what he was told. But
yeah.
I'm just thinking that it maybe wasn't.
Okay, so he thought he had some serious, difficult to resolve condition when all he needed was some water. We shouldn't underestimate how important good, clean water is and hydration is to the body. I mean, we're about 2/3 water as far as our bodies goes, and we need water for all kinds of things, including brain function and detoxification and lubrication and digestion. I mean, it's used for a lot of things, and people shouldn't underestimate something as simple as being properly hydrated, how that can really turn your health around. And it did for that gentleman.
It sure did.
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing, water.
Yeah. People are always looking for the complex answers. Sometimes it's some really low-hanging fruit.
It really is.
Yeah, that's terrific. So they work with you as a practitioner. You can help identify those things. What's the top advice you have for individuals you work with?
People that I work with, the first thing that I tell them, David, is that they're not alone. So never to try, when you're working and we're bringing in changes into your life and you're doing it, I always ask them to get support, like whether it's from family or community, something where someone and somewhere where they are being supported with the changes that they will need to make. And to let them know that it's not hard, to really break it down into tiny, small steps. And when it comes to nutrition, the tiniest step that someone could take is to maybe just start weaning themselves off of all the chemicals and all the food additives that we have in the processed food. And if that's the only step they could take at that time when they're starting. So I will not ask them to make overwhelming changes. If they love breakfast cereal, but if they're eating a cereal that has 15 chemicals, then maybe we work towards eating a cereal that has none, or maybe 1 or 2. So bringing the changes in baby steps, and always finding other people that will support you that are like-minded. That really
That's excellent. Excellent. I think that's really, really great advice. A lot of times when people find out that I'm an airline pilot, I'll get the question, oh, I've never met an airline pilot. So tell me, what's it like having all that responsibility when you go to work? You have 200 people's lives in your hands. Isn't that very stressful? And the truth is it isn't, because we grow into that responsibility. And when you learn how to fly, you take baby steps. You learn how to fly straight and level first, or how to start the engine, or just simply do the pre-flight inspection of a small 2-seater airplane we used to train in. And you master, or actually master is kind of a strong word. You gain competency in the little skills, and then you move on to the next lesson. Right. And the same is true and you're not going to find yourself in the captain's seat of an airliner until you've mastered many lessons, and you've got years, usually decades of experience before you get there. So you don't really feel the pressure. It's not like you're thrown in a lion's den. You grow into that responsibility a tiny step at a time. And I think the same is true with the changes we need to make to our health and wellness, our lifestyles. One small step that you can easily conquer. That failure is so simple and easy that failure is not an option. Like maybe drinking an extra glass of water in a day. Start there and then start to build. Gain competency in that skill, make that your normal routine, and then build upon it. And it's going to take a while. It took a while to get to where you feel today, and it's going to take a while to get to how you want to feel, but that's how you do it.
And also, David, I think a lot of times people don't even know how good it feels when we start weaning off. And when they start becoming aware, oh, I feel better, then it motivates them to do even more.
Yes.
So I think that's
absolutely.
something I found.
And you can easily get overwhelmed if you try to do it all at once. And you do the little things, you start to feel better. That's more motivating, and you build up steam, you build up momentum.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great stuff. When it comes to health and wellness, Pooja, what are you most passionate about? So you've decided to make some improvements to your health and well-being. You're listening to shows like this where you can get information that can help take your health to the next level. The trouble is, getting educated and implementing effective strategies is time-consuming and can be expensive, not to mention overwhelming. That's why I wrote my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. In my book, I've taken 20 years of research and experience as a natural and holistic health coach and distilled it down to what you need to know to maximize your health potential in spirit, mind, and body. It's my contention that we maximize our health potential by aligning our lives more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. My book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health, will put you on the fast track to the vibrant health and vitality you've been looking for. By the way, many of my recommendations won't cost you a nickel. They're free because a lot of my message is simply aligning our lives more fully with the Word of God. That doesn't cost you a thing. If you'd like to avoid overwhelm and get some biblically based holistic health information that you can implement right away, go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/book. That's DAVIDSANDSTROM as in Mike.com/book, and you can learn more and pick up a copy today. If that doesn't work, you can go directly to Amazon. It's available there in paperback, Kindle, and Audible. Now let's get back to the show. When it comes to health and wellness, Pooja, what are you most passionate about?
For health and wellness, David, I think I'm most passionate about people taking back their power. I know that sounds like, so for example, people don't realize how much control they do have over their bodies and over the choices that we're making on a daily basis. So one of the things that I love doing when I work with my clients is I put them as the experts. I always tell them, I am not the expert. You know your body, you know your life, you know everything that is there about you. My job is to just bring it out of you. And so the things that I'm passionate about when it comes to the body is many things, like your digestive system. That topic always gets me excited because people can eat the best diets, but if they're not digesting very well, then it's not working for them. Well,
we used to say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we used to say, you are what you eat. But that's actually not true. You are what you absorb.
Yes.
Right? So if you're not breaking that food down efficiently and absorbing it through the gut lining, you are not going to be putting that food to good use. So we need to have a digestive system that's working well in order to absorb the nutrients properly. We want to get it in just the right form. We don't want the gut wall to be too permeable and get large protein particles floating around in the blood. That will cause all kinds of issues, inflammation for sure, autoimmune conditions even. So you want the gut lining to be healthy. You want the gut microflora to be in good balance, and you want to be able to have proper enzyme production and enzymes in your food, as well as exogenous enzymes in the body, as well as bile production. There's a lot that goes on to assimilate food properly and put it to good use. It's not just what you put in your mouth.
No. And the digestive system is so important. And also what else is important is the bio-individual. We're all different. So I'm really passionate about working with people to figure out what works for them.
Excellent.
What is it that they can do and enjoy? Because food should be enjoyed.
Yes.
That's very key. I think it's a beautiful gift that we all have. It's nourishing, but it should also give us pleasure. That's what I believe.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. A lot of people, when they find out I'm a certified nutritional counselor, they'll ask me the question, well, what's the best diet? What's a healthy food? And the answer to that is, well, it depends. We're all individuals. The Roman philosopher Lucretius said, one man's food is another man's poison. And we're finding out there's a lot of truth there. I talk about this in my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. There's studies in the literature that say coffee is pro-inflammatory. And then there's other studies that say, no, coffee is actually anti-inflammatory. Well, how can they both be right? Well, the truth is they are, because they had different participants in their studies. If they ran the same study with another set of people, they would come up with different results. We're all individuals.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one thing I'm really passionate about, making sure that whatever we're doing, it fits that person.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's a good thing to be passionate about, because that's what people need help with. We can, as you said, we can get a lot of information off the internet, but it's easy to get overwhelmed. And just because an eating program or a certain food worked well for one person or supplement doesn't mean that it's going to work the same way in your body. We're all individuals. And that's why it's best to have someone who's been down this road before, works with people, and can help you be a health detective. Put that Sherlock Holmes hat on and be a detective that looks beneath the surface to find out, well, what's going on with you? What works for you? What doesn't work with you? We all know that we have to give our bodies more of what they do want and less of what they don't want. And that sometimes is a process. You can't just read it in a book.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So, Pooja, if someone was just starting out in their health journey and having trouble making the necessary changes, what advice would you have for that person?
If they're having trouble making the changes, I would ask them to really, there has to be something that they could do, which is very, very easy for them to do. So it's going back to that very, very tiny step. So if the tiny step is difficult, can we make it even tinier? So I really would like to work with that person to figure out what is that first step that they can do absolutely no brainer without thinking. So we'll look for multiple options. Like, for me personally, when I was on that journey, my kids had a fit because I was starting to throw out all of their favorite foods out of the pantry. So that wasn't working, I
know that problem. Been down that road.
And so I really had to take a deep breath and say, well, what is it that I can do without fighting with them, without any hindrance, any battles? And I realized very quickly that just sitting next to the food, that same food in the grocery store on the same shelf, just sitting next to it, we can always find a different version. And so I started there. Was it ideal? No, it was still processed food. I switched out goldfish for some similar cheese puffs that had no colors, no preservatives, no additives. So, it wasn't ideal. I wanted them off of everything junk.
Yeah.
But it was the one thing I could do easily. So I always tell them to not feel like, I try to help them not feel any shame or judgment.
Yeah.
Because like you said earlier, David, you described it so well. We have to grow into things.
Yes.
And nothing happens in nature overnight.
Right.
And habits that we've built over a lifetime isn't going to go away at the blink of an eye.
Right. And that's true with the individual, but imagine how much so that's even more expanded into a family. So, the classic, the mom reads a book or goes to see a health coach and learns something about nutrition, comes home. We got to throw everything in the pantry out. We're starting over. We're turning over a new leaf. And the family's going to stare at her like she's lost her mind.
Yes. Right? I've been on that end, so I know.
So, a step at a time, finding some healthier ingredients that can add maybe a different flavor, but add flavor to the food and not destroy your health in the process. Eliminating or at least reducing as much as we can genetic modification and non-organic foods. It's pretty impossible to eat 100% organic. I don't think it can be done. But whenever possible, or as much as your budget will allow, that's a good place to start. And you don't have to do it all at once either. You just one food at a time.
I always tell them, make one little change. And if you can make 12 changes in a year, you're good. That's a lot of changes.
Yes.
But one change a month even. Yeah. One tiny, tiny change a month.
Right. And as we said earlier, as you pick up steam, maybe it's one change a month to begin with, but then you can turn it into one change a week. As you pick up steam and gain confidence and you're feeling better, you have more motivation. 52 changes in a year. That's a lot. That is a lot of progress.
That is a lot, David. And are you, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Pooja's the model of change.
No, I'm not.
And, he says that there's these steps of change. First we're just contemplating, and then we wake up and we make those changes. Then we get into a maintenance mode, and then we may even have a relapse, like you go back to your old ways. And that's where I want people to know that even if we slip, even if we go back to our old habits, but we're still not the same person.
Yes.
So there's going to be that momentum, all that practice, all those little changes we made has changed us.
Mm-hmm.
So now, so I always ask people to know that there's no judgment, there's no shame. And that's why it's so important to surround yourself with like-minded people, listen to these kind of podcasts, just have that support around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're making changes.
The Bible says iron sharpens iron, right?
That's
Get around
right.
people that sharpen you. Don't hang out with people that are bringing you down. You might have to be acquaintances with some of those people. But as far as letting them into your inner circle and making them close friends, probably not. I mean, if you're committed to growth, spiritual growth, mental, emotional growth, physical growth, it's best to hang around people that are like-minded and understand those things and want to do the same things you do, because you'll lift one another up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really huge.
Yes.
And, I've been doing a little research recently on relational connectedness, and it's even more significant than I thought. There is a study, I mentioned this one in my book, that it was a meta-analysis it covers something like 60 years and hundreds of studies, a massive amount of people, like 300 million people or something ridiculously large like that. And they said under the worst case scenario, lifetime single men would die 17 years younger than married men. And that's not just good marriages, that's all marriages. And women didn't fare much better. They died 15 years younger. And the Bible says, I believe it's Genesis 2:18, it is not good for the man to be alone. So it's really nice to see modern science catching up with that biblical declaration that's been around for thousands of years. There was another study. This one was published in Harvard Health News in, I believe it was 2010. They found that positive relationships were beneficial to your health, but a lack of relational connectedness was detrimental. And they said lack of relational connectedness was about equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and worse than sedentary lifestyle and obesity for your health outcomes. So, I mean, people know that, smoking cigarettes is bad and sedentary lifestyle and obesity is bad, but how many people know that a lack of relational connectedness is worse than all of that?
David, that doesn't surprise me. That's going back to feeding our spirit and our soul, right?
Yes.
And we were designed for relationships.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really tough.
So if your problem is loneliness, and you're suffering with whatever health challenge, fill in the blank, trouble with your weight, trouble with insulin sensitivity, metabolic syndrome, those kinds of things, you could switch to a 100% organic diet tomorrow, but until you work on the root cause, the loneliness, those things aren't going to change. So it's really important to address the whole person. I feel strongly about that.
I know you do. And it's true. I mean, that's how because we're not just one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That amazes me that we're kind of, I always think of it like we're a trinity too, the mind, body, spirit.
Absolutely. Well, we're made in his image, right? And God exists in three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's our belief. And we are made in his image. So therefore, we also are tripartite beings. We are a spirit, we have a mind, and we live in a body. It's the whole person. When I was a practitioner, I'm going to share this story with you real quick. When I was a practitioner, I was doing mostly nutritional counseling. But I was making the same mistake that a lot of practitioners make. I called myself holistic, but I really didn't know what the term meant. I focused almost exclusively on the physical, and I all but ignored the mental, emotional components to a human being. I now know that's folly. When I was living in, back in the mid-'80s, living in Fort Lauderdale, I was a Miami Dolphin fan, and I used to love to go to the games. And at the time, the quarterback was Dan Marino, and the head coach was Don Shula. And I heard Don Shula say on a show that they had on television, it's called The Shula Show. He said, the first time I saw Dan Marino play, I said to myself, he's got the best arm I've ever seen, and I'm going to build my team around this guy's arm. And that's exactly what they did. They hired a couple of great wide receivers, and they could rack up some points really fast. It was beautiful to watch. I loved it. But as good as Dan Marino was, he had the quick release, all the ingredients to a great quarterback, maybe one of the best 2 or 3 or 4 quarterbacks that ever played the game. He doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. He never won a championship. The Dolphins found out that you can't win a championship on a single component to a great team. They had the passing game, but they needed a running game and they needed a defense. And the Dolphins had neither, and they couldn't win a championship. The same is true with our health and wellness. If we focus on one part of a healthy person, the physical, that may not be enough to build a championship vitality. We've got to acknowledge that we are a spirit, we have a mind, and we live in a body. And it's all interconnected with what affects one part of our being by necessity will alter the others for good or bad. So that's my story.
And that's a great story, David. And while you were saying that, the word that popped in my head was harmony. There has to be harmony between the three, just like there's unity in the Trinity, right?
Yes. Excellent.
This harmony.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that harmony, like a symphony orchestra.
Yes.
Yeah. We are complex beings. It's just, nutrition is just not that simple. Relationships are not that simple. And our spiritual component is not that simple either. I'm gonna do some upcoming episodes in the near future. I'm going to do a series of podcasts, solo episodes on the spiritual component to health. If you're listening to this now, be looking for that, because I feel passionate. I need to produce those shows because I really want to do a deep dive into what the spiritual component actually looks like. And I think it's an important topic.
I would look forward to that too.
So Pooja, I want to ask you another thing. I know that you were raised Hindu, correct? And
yes.
You became a follower of Jesus Christ. And then you mentioned earlier, you walked away from the faith. You were leaning and pressing into atheism. That's a pretty abrupt turn. and then you came back to the faith. Now, what happened to your health when you were in that fallen state, when you were walking away from the faith?
Well, I think because I was disconnected from my spirit. At that time, I had been already serving for 17 years in various kinds of ministries, and there was a burnout physically. But the reason my spirit I was disconnected from is because I was spending most of my time trying to fulfill other people's expectations, and I had lost my connection with God, my quiet time. That is, I think, where we get the most nourishment from. Mm-hmm. And I had replaced that with the voices of a million people around me, constantly trying to, what they considered was God's will for me or what they wanted me to believe, rather than trying to take the time to spend that time with my own personal reflection and meditation. So naturally, my spiritual gas tank was running on empty and the engine just burned out.
I hear you. Yeah.
And so when I was that disconnected from myself, it was just really hard to think about God. Like I remember one morning I just woke up and I felt like there is no God. Like there just can't be, because my idea of God was it was a very distorted image of God, David. And that image crept in and built up over time, because it was as if, God was no longer the God that I had met when I had become a Christian from Hinduism. Because that turning point happened to me at the age of 19. And that was a physical healing and a very sweet voice. And it's a really long story, so I don't want to take up all the time. But that's what made me switch from Hinduism to Christianity. But unfortunately, instead of following that voice, you know how Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice.
Yes, John 10.
And they will not follow another. Well, instead of following after my shepherd, I was following after everything else that appeared to be that it was Christian, or that it was, the name of Jesus was certainly attached to it, but it was a very strict, very legalistic environment that I was in. Uh-huh. And my image of God was completely skewed. So it went from this loving God who has given me grace to a very strict and punishing God.
Can I interrupt? Yeah, who wants that, right? I just need to add one thing, because sometimes when we use that term legalistic, some people will say, well, what do you mean by that? And what Pooja's talking about is adding rules and regulations into your life, these layers of rules into your life that God doesn't necessarily require. There's things, we know the 10 Commandments, right? Well, most of us know them. Do not steal, do not lie, do not commit adultery. These are things designed for our wellness, our well-being in mind. But when we start saying things like, well, I have a conviction that since I'm a married man, I'm not going to have lunch alone with a woman. And if you do that, then there's something wrong with that. Oh, wait a minute. That is not in the Bible. Okay. And we can't put that on somebody else. If you have a personal conviction, that's great, but you can't put that on somebody else. That's legalism.
Yes, David. And another example which I faced was, if you're not in church every time the door is open, that means your faith is weak. Mm. And so that was too much pressure, you know what I mean? Because church was open a lot. And so if you weren't there all the time, then you just weren't being faithful.
Well, there's a perfect blend between the spirit and the mind, because one of the things I talk about to address with our minds, our mental emotional component, is identifying and correcting limiting beliefs. So you had that limiting belief there that, hey, if you don't get there every time the church doors are open, you're just a no good Christian. You are not living up to the standard. And that's just simply not true, right?
Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, because the heart is more important, right? The transformed heart is more important than my external. I can fake things, right? But only God knows what's inside my heart.
So yeah, the Bible says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. And that's Proverbs 4:23. But a lot of people are not familiar with the verses that precede that. And that's Proverbs chapter 4, verses 20 through 22. My son, give attention to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them depart from your sight. Keep them in the midst of your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to all their body. So there's the connection between the spiritual component and the physical component. God says, hey, if you ponder my word and you meditate on it, guess what? It's going to have a positive impact on your physical vitality. Isn't that great? I mean, I just love that passage.
Absolutely. I love it too, David. I didn't realize, like, I've always heard the one about guard your heart, but there was that one before that. I have to go back and read it.
It's really good when you tie it all together. You know, there's more to a person than just the spirit or the mind or the body, and addressing them all together. I think we're going to have to call this episode a holistic health, because you're spending a lot of time there. So Pooja, I want to talk just a little bit about the inspiration to your book. Now, you have a number of books, but what's your best seller? What's the one that you sell the most or you're most proud of?
Well, the one that sells the most is my memoir, and then there was Jesus, and it has my whole story, my entire spiritual journey.
Oh, very good.
But I guess the one that I love the most is the Unveiling Jesus series that I've written. It's a couple of devotional books. And I guess I really love it because it was part of my own healing journey. From distorted images of Jesus, I was moving towards a much healthier version of who he really was and what he came and taught.
Yeah.
So just spending time with God and listening to his heart gave rise to those two books. So those are more special for me personally.
Excellent. Very good. If someone wants to get a hold of your books, what's the best way to do that?
The best way is to go on Amazon.
Go to Amazon and say and spell your name for the listeners, for the HM community.
Yes. My first name is Pooja, Pooja, and my last name is Chilukuri, Chilukuri.
Okay, very good. And what's your website?
It's PoojaChilukuri.com.
Okay, very good.
And yes, the books are available there too. So.
All right. Pooja, aside from your books, do you have any book recommendations for the listeners?
I really love this book because it changed my life, David, 10 years ago when I was trying to reconstruct my worldview and my faith in God. And this book is called Soul Repair. And it's by an interventionist. His name is Jeff Van Wonderen. And he really walks you through all the toxic ways and distorted ways that we can be in relationship to God. It's really well done. And I think if you're trying to recover from a bad church experience, or if you're confused about your relationship with God, because like you said, David, when the spirit is well, then the body will be well.
Absolutely. If the foundation is secure, the building will stay upright.
And he really helps you walk away from having a codependent, toxic relationship with God into a much more healthier, grace-based one.
That sounds terrific.
So if anybody's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely include that in the show notes. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, Pooja, before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me and giving me the space to share my story.
It's my pleasure. It's a pleasure speaking with you.
It's you too.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Pooja Chilukuri. She's got a real passion to incorporate her faith in Jesus into holistic health coaching practice. And I think this is a great episode for someone who's just getting used to the idea of a faith-based holistic approach to health. As I said earlier in the episode, I'm going to be creating a series of episodes where I'll take a deeper dive into what the spiritual component to health really looks like. But if you know somebody who's just getting started in this journey in a faith-based, biblically based approach to addressing their health holistically, I think this is a great episode. So if you know someone, please share it with them. I would appreciate that. Don't forget, this episode is brought to you by my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. In those pages, I give you detailed instructions on how to maximize your health potential by aligning your life more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. If this biblically based message is resonating with you, what are you waiting for? Go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/book, and order your copy today. For more, go to davidsandstrom.com. In the show notes for each episode, you'll find links to all the resources that were mentioned, as well as a full transcript with timestamps that you can download for free. In addition, I always include a content upgrade with each show, which is a free download that is designed to help you go deeper with that subject. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll talk with you next week. Be blessed.